Lights are bright on Friday
It's
night.
finally
Small
here.
Texas town.
It's time to talk some
People
playoff
train like
football.
balls to
As
play,
this
and
is
there
the
ain't
Central
nobody
Texas Football
around.
Podcast brought to you by Ranch and Home Masters Real Estate right there in Lake Whitney. Joining me is my co-host, or I'm his co-host. I don't know if we ever really figured out the dynamics of this one this year, but it's Kenny Heath. And Kenny, it's finally here, playoff football.
Yeah, man, this is a exciting time of year. The season blew by. 11 weeks of football, and now we're here. And I think Texas doesn't. I don't know how other states do it, but it's a big deal here in Texas. I think they do a good job of it. I like the 4-team per district format, so it's exciting.
Yeah, you'll get those people that'll claim that the fourth place, that's too many teams and the playoffs are watered down. I will never understand loving a sport and then wanting less playoff games. That just makes no sense to me. And I think I do think the fourth is that perfect sweet spot. If you tried to go one more, then you are getting ridiculous as far as just the amount of games you'd have to play. And then, the UIL tries their best not to have 4-team districts, but that's going to happen. But again, at the end of the day, the cream rises. I mean, the teams that are supposed to advance will advance. And here in Central Texas, we've got a ton of football games to talk about. All right, so we want to get a couple things out of the way. This is my sideline to sideline speech I give every year when we start the playoffs. By the way, the playoff tree is up and shining today. We're not reviewing anything that happened last week other than in reference to just bringing up a comment like Mahia, they lost their running back last week, stuff like that. And that's kind of how it'll be going forward for the next couple weeks because there's just so many games. We're going to have 34 this week, and then basically next week we're going to have 16. After that, then we might start reviewing some things and talking a little bit more of the back pass. But we just wanted to get all that out of the way now. And where do you want to start?
Let's start with our Matt Stepp question of the week. So, he took the week off last week due to me not sending him a question, but we asked him, which Super Syntex first round games could you see being an upset? And tell us why. He likes Waco University, may have a chance to upset Fort Bend Marshall. Also, Gatesville's playing really well late and could give Madisonville trouble. And he thinks Whitney is not your average 4 seed, and he's got that one on an upset alert against Palmer. That's a 1 out of District 6 versus the 4 out of District 5, which both districts are I don't know any of them are going to be regional favorites, but they're both pretty competitive districts.
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, of course, we've been following the Whitney one all year. And again, with Whitney, it's been weird. Whitney and Glen Rose are two of the teams that have been amusing to me in that, of course, Whitney's lost their offensive guy for the complete season, but Glen Rose lost their offensive guy for a good chunk. And both teams, when they've lost their offensive guys, actually scored more points. And defense was the issue. It's just one of those odd, weird things that's how football sometimes works. But yeah, and I agree with you, by the way, on University. I think that's a prime upset up in that class, even though we don't talk about it. Hey, let's talk 4A Division I. Let's talk Eastern Hills. Oh, and here's the other thing. We won't talk along on some of these, like this one right here. Eastern Hills versus Alvarado. Eastern Hills on the year, they're 4-6. They finished 4th in 4A Division I that has Springtown, Decatur, Southwest, and Eastern Hills. They made the playoffs. You can make the case that the Highlanders, all of their losses are quality losses because who they lost to. They lost to 5 playoff teams, but they weren't close. I mean, they got beat by Mineral Wells 42-14, Decatur 55-0, Springtown 35-0. Go on. Alvarado, of course, 10-0, number 3 in the state. Kadera Collier, one of the best, most exciting quarterbacks in 4A Division I, but also DeMarcus Belton, their running back / athlete. Alvarado will name their score in this one.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be a great little region too, because sooner or later you think that it'll be in the regional finals when Salina and Alvarado may meet. Now, there's some other teams that may have something to say about that. Panther Creek's in that bracket with Alvarado, so that'll be a fun little region to watch.
And you still got Sulphur Springs there. I still think they're a team that coming out of that second place. They're in Salina's district. I think they're going to be tough. Yeah, and this is the issue for Alvarado. They're having a, even though it's done completely different than what they used to, running the old, power set run and playing defense. But this is felt like Alvarado of old. The problem is this region. I mean, it still feels like it's tough, but it also still it's tough. But is anybody gonna be shocked if Salina doesn't make it out of the region? Because I would be very shocked if Salina's not the region winner this year.
Yeah, that's who I think gets it, and I think that that'll be a good one. Of course, Salina, they've got some teams down there on their bottom side of the bracket that's going to be tough. But yeah, I think that regional final, Alvarado, Sulphur Springs, Salina, whichever, that's going to be a fun one.
All right, let's go to 4A Division II. You've got the new school, Eagle Mountain. Of course, Jeremy Mullins, former head coach of Toller, he's been running them. They're taking on Glen Rose. Now, this is one of those games that, about 5 weeks ago, you'd have been like, ooh, this could be interesting. The Glen Rose started out, prohibitive. No, I don't want to say prohibitive region favorites, but pretty close. I think a lot of, and I still think that they have a really good chance to win the region. But injuries and then defense has still been an issue. Defense is, they started struggling, and then Eagle Mountain. They've lost a lot health-wise. I think their quarterback is going to be out. I'm almost 90% sure his quarterback. I think he's out for the year. And they've had some other issues. So I don't think this one will be really close. But for Eagle Mountain, first year, you make the playoffs. Jeremy Mullins has got that program already headed into the right direction. They're going to be scary this year, but this game's going to be scary because Glen Rose is going to make it ugly.
Yeah, it's like you said earlier. Glen Rose kind of struggled when their quarterback went out, and it was surprisingly defensively. But they've been in a roll here lately, and beat a really good Benbrook team a couple of weeks ago, so they should roll.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised that Glen Rose won that game, but I will admit, I really thought Benbrook had arrived and was closer to. I was even ready to call them a region dark horse, but the way Glen Rose beat them, and Benbrook has got a really tough first round game this week. We don't have them on the sheet, but since we're talking this district, that they've got Mineral Wells, and talk about Worrells. Cody Worrell is the head coach at Mineral Wells. His dad Chad's the head coach at Pilot, but Cody's got that team playing really good. They got beat by Brock a couple weeks ago, but it was only 21-0. They got beat by Graham 35-0, but it was like 14-0 at half as well. That's if you're making out brackets, and I know a lot of people do this like NCAA. If you want to be different and you want to try to pick up a surprise, watch out. I could see Mineral Wells beating Benbrook.
Yeah, that's kind of cool that weren't they both at Burleson together when he got that Mineral Wells job? They came up from El Campo. They were at Burleson, and kind of split off, and he got that.
Yeah, I mean, Cody's been the offensive coordinator for Chad since Brock.
Okay.
He was there helping him when Chad built Brock. And if people don't know, Brock, as great as they've only been in a football program for like 10 years now. Mm-hmm. Officially on the UL level, they had a couple of the what do they call those years? Rebel schedules or whatever. But Chad. Yeah, thank you. Chad was the head coach, and his son Cody, who was the quarterback for Salina in 07 through 09, he had been the offensive coordinator. They went to El Campo, they went to Burleson, and then, like you said, Cody split at Burleson. This is Cody's second year at Mineral. Let's go ahead and stay in that district because that's we've got the other one on that, and that's Godley versus Brock. Again, this was a game that a few weeks ago I'd have said, this could have been an interesting game. I thought Godley played Alvarado pretty solid early in the year, but then Stephenville thumped them. But then they barely got beat by Glen Rose, and they barely got beat by Benbrook. But I think that's just more. They're closer to Benbrook and Glen Rose than any of them are closer to Brock. I think Brock is still really, really angry about what happened 2 weeks ago against Graham, where they just got absolutely manhandled. Nobody saw that coming. So I think Brock, and this is a scary thing if you're in Division II 4A. I think Brock has that. We need to prove it on their back now, and I think they start this week. I think they name their score.
Yeah, I agree. And I think they probably run that top side of that bracket, and then down below you got, Glen Rose is going to run into Graham eventually, so that'll be fun to watch.
Oh, yeah, and I do think that that is going to happen. Now, here is one that I am interested in, and that's Waco Conley versus Belleville. You know, we've talked about Conley on here a lot. Let me, for people that don't know, of course, Belleville last year, I think you could say got upset in the state championship game against Gilmer. Belleville was the hottest team going into that game, and the way they had dominated West Orange Stark and the way they had dominated Silsbee, you know, it felt like they had, excuse me, it felt like they were going to finally get that state championship. And they just couldn't give Gilmer all the credit. This year, it's been injuries and it's been a tougher schedule. They got beat by Salina. They got beat by Hitchcock. I saw them get beat by Columbus in an absolute just war of a game. But since then, they've been on a win streak. Now, again, we can talk about who they've played, but I mean, you're talking, they've played Sealy, they've played Madisonville. Those are two playoff teams. DJ Sanders is maybe I don't want to say maybe, I think he is the best defensive lineman in the state of Texas, no matter the class. 6'3", 300 pounds. He moves well. And I don't have the kid's name. They got a move in from Houston that is another 4-star defensive tackle, and he became eligible 2 weeks ago, so he will be playing for the playoffs. So Belleville, which their issue has been defense, now to be fair, it's been the secondary. They've struggled giving up yards, but if you get 2 defensive tackles getting pressure, that'll help. But I tell you what, man, we've said this all year. If Conley plays up to their ability, this is ripe for an upset.
Yeah, and you know, in this position because Gatesville blocked a kick, the last-second kick against Conley last week, and Conley could be playing Madisonville. I think if I'm a 4A D2 team in that region, the last team I want to face is Belleville because you know just basically what you said. You know, Conley can play with them, I guess, but I'm going to go with Belleville. I mean, just too tough.
Yeah, I agree. At the end of the day, I think that Belleville will end up winning. Hey, LaGrange versus La Vega. LaGrange on the year 6-4. Again, they're a team that had some solid losses. They lost to Madisonville by 14 in a high scoring. They lost to Sealy by 10, but they also got beat by Columbus, and there's no shame in getting beat by Columbus, but they got beat by Columbus by 45. They got beat by Belleville by 42. At the end of the day, I don't think they have enough. And I think La Vega is rounding into form right at the perfect time.
Yeah, and you know, I think they finally got their quarterback. They kind of juggled a few dudes early in the season. Bryson Rowland's just going to do what he does. The defense is playing well, and I think La Vega's prime for a little run here.
And the biggest thing I think you said is that defense. And again, you know, we're all used to La Vega being a defensive team, but the last 2 years that they've kind of struggled on that, but it feels like that they're getting back into form. Sealy taking on Robinson. This is another one that, this is another one that maybe 3 weeks ago probably doesn't happen. Sealy loses their star quarterback, Kane Killo. He's out for the year. Give them credit. Since then, they have put up points, but they got beat by Madisonville 38-14. They had taken, before the quarterback got hurt, this will tell you how good they were. They took Belleville to overtime before losing 35-28. They took Bay City to the mat, losing 35-34 in non-district because Sealy went for 2 because they didn't want to go. You know, you try not to go to overtime in non-district games if you can help it. They went for 2 and they missed it. So, I mean, their losses are really, really solid. And I don't want to pretend like they don't have anything else, but man, Kane Killo is one of those that he led a really good team of great wide receivers and Elijah Sanders and Noah Washington, and they can still move a little bit. But I mean, Robinson's going to look across the field and be like, yeah, we've seen better 3 or 4 times this year.
Yeah, I think McCurdy and Marino, you know, those guys after that loss to La Vega, you know, they've reeled off 2, the 45-25 last week to China Spring to kind of ruin their playoff hopes. So I got Robinson. I don't know much about City. Of course you do. You covered the whole state, but I didn't know their quarterback was down. But that's kind of maybe the linchpin in that one.
But I do want to say, you know, and this is going to happen, folks. You know, we're going to, you know, I think me and him were talking before we started going. There's 5 of these in almost every class, and sometimes there's 5 in every division, depending on the draws, where these teams 8-2s and 7-3s and 8-2s and 6-4s, and the 6-4s are going to win some of them. And this is, to me, one of those that's very ripe for that if Robinson does not come out and play well.
What about, let's go 3AD1. What do you, so this, let me start this one. Whitney Palmer, number 4 versus number 1 in Waxahachie Thursday night. What's your thoughts on this one?
Well, first off, you just got to give, tip your hat to Whitney, where it felt like after injuries and just like, 3 straight losses and tough ones too. It wasn't, sometimes it's better just go out and completely get throttled. But when you're losing by 3 and you're losing by 4, and then that Mexia one kind of got away from them, give them credit for bouncing back, especially last week. I thought that they were going to beat West, but I legitimately, I didn't think it was going to be as bad as it was. So I was really surprised by that. And again, this is another one that I'll say the same thing. Palmer's the district champ. Palmer's 8-2. Palmer was 6-0 in district. I don't know that if you look at their schedule, Grand Saline, a very good team. But like Pottsboro's okay this year. Their only loss is to Palmer, but Pottsboro beat, a really, really good Munster team, but Munster's 2A division too. So I think this is a game that, again, I kind of see Whitney winning this game, and I think they might win it by 10 points.
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be a shootout. The
Yes.
Whitney defense is kind of, against bad offenses, they play really well. They shut out West, and no shot at no. I'm not taking a shot at West as a whole, but they're just offense isn't that good. They're known for their defense, and I think it's going to be a shootout, and it's probably going to get up into the 50s, I would imagine. I think Whitney can probably win it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And to give that back to District 6 3A, I legitimately think there's another possible upset with Pilot Point and Mexia. And first off, again, congratulations on the year. Mexia finally kind of felt like once they got into district, they finally kind of broke through and finally won some games that they usually end up losing. Aaron Noel's done a great job there of building what was once a consistent team that had completely fallen off the face of the earth, and now they're trying to at least come back to be consistent. They had a great win last week against Grandview. They lose their running back, and then they still win. But I will say this. You see that all the time in the moment, in the game, adrenaline, everything's going. You lose your start, you figure it out. It's the next week where you start to see the issues, and especially when you're going up against the Pilot Point coach, as we keep become the Cody or the Chad Worrell and Cody Worrell hour right now. but Chad Worrell, took a program that, the things the superintendent was doing to the program at Pilot Point last year was like almost a bad movie. Like the plot point was, there's the evil and he's destroyed the thing. So they get rid of him. They bring in this. I think she was a former superintendent somewhere else, but she did the smartest thing. She called Chad Worrell, who's from Pilot Point, said, here's the keys to the football program and the sports program. Go win. And in year 1, they went from being a combined 3-17 over the last 2 years to making the playoffs. And their losses are some really, really good losses, like losing to Pottsboro by 8, losing to Whitesboro by 11, but that was a 1-possession game for most of the game. And it just feels like with Mexia losing their running back, I could see them struggling. I'm going to say they're going to end up winning it because I do think Mexia is more athletic, and I think Pilot Point's a couple years away from being more than just a playoff team. But again, circle this game and just watch out, folks. Don't be surprised if it's really close.
Yeah, I think this is probably going to be another high-scoring type of game. Mexia will give up some points. So they have Pilot Point the same. They've given up some points, but heck, they hung 88 on Live Oak Cliff last week. I could see either one of these, and we talked about it before we started recording. I could see 5 sweeping 6, and I could see 6 sweeping 5. But the only pause I have is that 4-1 game. But I agree with you, and Where did that Pilot Point superintendent end up? Does anybody know where he's at?
No comment on that one. That's why I didn't say anything past that. I didn't know how far you wanted me to go with that one. But I think what's probably going to happen is we're going to have some trade-offs. I don't think anybody sweeps anybody. Let's talk about Maypearl versus Pottsboro. Again, this is another one to me. I know a lot of people will think Pottsboro is the favorite. I think Maypearl wins. We've talked about Maypearl all year. I was a little disappointed. Again, credit Mexia, but I was a little disappointed after taking Grandview to the mat that Maypearl then dropped the game against Mexia, but they had to go on the road back-to-back weeks and stuff. So, and again, program that's just usually around 5 and 6, 6 and 4, 7, and you have to learn how to win those games when you're on the road. I feel like though this one they can win this one.
Yeah, and I think that's what Coach Emeron's doing. Maypearl in the past, they would hang with you in the first half, and then they would just kind of peel off and disappear. These dudes play 4 quarters and more. They've been in some overtime games. I like them. I think this is probably along the lines of a toss-up. Pottsboro's 9-1. They're not too far removed from a state championship game and a 3 or 4 round run a couple of years ago. So those kids are experienced over there. But yeah, I guess I don't know that it's hard for me to pick them. I think Pottsboro probably takes this one.
And I have no problem. Again, this is that to me is the epitome of a pick'em game. As is this one. Again, this is another one. I think a lot of people will be like, "Why do you think this is a pick'em game?" But Grandview versus Whitesboro. Grandview this year, you got to give them credit. Like everybody, I was told this, you were told this, and by people I trust, and I still trust them, even though they're going to take a big step back. Well, I mean, you could say, well, they're 6 and 4, they took a step back. Look at who they lost to: Glen Rose, Conley, Malakoff, Mexia, all playoff teams. Yep. And really the only one that you go, wow, is the Mexia one. But by the time that game happened, Mexia had proven like, hey, this Mexia team is pretty darn solid. And so I know they're the district champ and all, but I think Whitesboro might be the slight favorite. I think Grandview is going to win this game. But yeah, I think some people might think Whitesboro is a slight favorite, but I think the Zebras still win this game.
Well, we talked about it last week with Bryce Cherry, 5-3A D1. None of these teams really look like you thought they would look at the beginning of the year. Grandview lost Jaleel Allen. Whitney lost their running back. West lost their running back. The kid, the sophomore at Groesbeck, that's got getting all the talk, he's gone. I don't know if he quit or he's hurt, but he's off the team. And so Grandview's not going to blow you away like they have in the past with Jaleel Allen or Case in English. But they've got 2 running backs, number 0, number 5, Dominguez, and I think Blaine, I forgot the number 5's name, Hubbard, I think's his name. They're tough-nosed kids. You're going to tackle them for 3 yards, and they're going to bust one for 40. The quarterback has gotten way better as the year went on. I like Grandview in this one. I think that they're kind of hitting their stride, and Coach Ebner has talked about it in years past. It's going to be rough the first couple of games, but hopefully by the time the playoffs get here, we're kind of hitting on all cylinders. And even though they lost a tough one to Mexia last week, I think they're primed for, I don't know, they're going to go 3 or 4 rounds, but I think they get this one.
Tatum versus Malakoff. Now, again, this is one people are going to say, well, Tatum 6 and 4, Malakoff, of course. Malakoff, but here's Tatum's losses. 2 points to Newton, 10 points to Liberty Ilo. The Atlanta one's the weird one. They got beat 42-7. But then last week they took Jefferson, the district champ and undefeated and a very good Bulldog team, took them to the mat before losing 18-13. While Malakoff last week, my co-host Sideline to Sideline, Grant Goodwin, was at this one. Malakoff had to hold off Winsboro, or technically Malakoff broke the tie late against Winsboro, 35-28. I think Malakoff's going to win, and I think Malakoff's going to win pretty easily. But again, this is one of those, don't be surprised if Tatum hangs around for a little bit.
Yeah, that's got to be one of the toughest districts in the state with not Jefferson, Liberty Ilo, Atlanta, Tatum, all those. I wouldn't want to play any of those dudes in the first round. Unfortunately, Tatum's got Malakoff, was the 27-37. How many game winning streak are they on? 27?
27, I think.
27 game win streak, defending state champ. Probably my pick to win it again. They did. I mean, I wouldn't call it a hiccup. They beat a really good Winsboro team last week, like you just said. But I think they're primed to win this region. It's going to be a tough one. They'll end up who we got Jefferson on the bottom of the bracket, so that's going to be it's going to be a tough one. But yeah, I like Malachi.
For that district though, the one thing that Tatum and Atlanta, and that's 8-3A by the way, Tatum and Atlanta and all they have to do is they've got to do it outside the first round. All of these teams have had an issue of they have pretty records. You know, Jefferson, this is the whole reason they have a new coach this year, is their former coach who was on their 86 state championship team, Antoine Jimerson. He did a wonderful job, but they just couldn't get past the first round. You know, in 2018, they did go 12 games, but I mean, 2018 they were 10-0 and top 4 in the state, and they get beat in the second round. And so, as tough as this district has been, and it is, they've got to prove it outside the district. I think everybody but Tatum probably will, because you know, Atlanta has Winsboro. That'll be a tough one, but Liberty Ilo will beat Commerce, and then Jefferson will beat Mineola. Cold Spring versus Teague. What do you think about this one?
You know, Teague's been kind of up and down. You know, the Leha, their quarterback, and they got a running back, Coaster. I watched them last year in the first round. They barely got past West because of a crazy 2-point conversion play that West played in the rain, having their receiver try to throw the ball. I don't know much about Orangefield. I think Teague's got some pieces, and I'm going to go with Teague. I'm sorry, Cold Spring, not Orangefield. That's Fairfield, Orangefield.
You know, the Cold Spring, the Trojans last year that was supposed to be like this real big, like, hey, we're back. You know, this was a team that played in the state championship about 10 years ago, and then they kind of fallen off, and then they'd kind of gotten back. And last year they were supposed to be really back, and then they kind of struggled, and then everybody kind of forgot about them this year. And then this year they just quietly put together a really solid 7-3 record. I like the Trojans in this one, but again, this is 1,000% a pick 'em. Anything in some of these cross district matchups, anything outside of 1 and 4 is going to be a toss up.
Yeah, and you know, I'm just saying Teague because they're kind of our local team here. I don't know much about Cold Spring. I know in the past they've been really well. Yeah, I'll go with Teague. What about Fairfield, Orangefield? They're playing in Splendora.
I'm glad to see Fairfield back. Man, there was another 10 years ago when they had that really good running back. They had 2 of them, but one of them was really, really good. I think he ended up playing in the pros. And Fairfield made a nice run, and then since then they've kind of been fair to middling. Give me the Bobcats in this one. Orangefield on the year. They've got 2 losses, and they're really good losses to Woodville and Bridge City, 2 playoff teams. They thumped East Chambers a few weeks ago, and East Chambers is, I think, a solid team. The top 3 in this district are really, really good. And it's funny saying that because Anahuac is the team that a lot of people, you know, had coming out of this district, and then they're going to end up sitting at home because of tiebreakers. Kind of crazy to think that, but Orangefield, I think, is the real deal. I think Orangefield, with the right break, could end up playing a couple rounds. Yeah,
Fairfield, their quarterbacks. I think he's leading the Central Texas area in throwing. He slings the ball a lot. You know, he can throw really well. They're all offense enough for the number 1 seed out of that district in Orangefield.
What do you think about Franklin and Hallettsville? Does Hallettsville have a chance?
I don't know. There's no Brooks on Hallettsville anymore. He's gone, right? So I think, man, Franklin. You know, they're 7-2. Yeah, I got Franklin, and that region is going to be fun too. I mean, you got Hitchcock and Columbus, and I think Troy may be able to, if things fall right, might make a little bit of noise. That's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, I think Franklin will name their score. I think Hitchcock will name their score against LRA. I think Columbus will name their score against Yo. Yoakum and Troy, Yoakum's always interesting. Yoakum, you never know what you're going to get other than Yoakum is going to be very athletic. They're going to be very fast, and they're going to be very battle tested because they play a very tough schedule. And you know, they have some quality losses on their schedule, losing to Cuero, to Columbus, to Hitchcock. They beat Port Lavaca Calhoun, a 4A team that's second in their district. They beat Vanderbilt Industrial 45-42. That might not sound like a big thing, and I know Vanderbilt Industrial got rid of their coach in the middle of the year. You know, that's we can make all the comments about that. But when you look at the schedule Vanderbilt Industrial had played and what they were doing, you could see why they were as bad as they were at one point. But that still was a good win for Yoakum. In saying that, I think Troy will win. But again, this is one of those, don't be shocked if Yoakum pulls off the upset.
Yeah, and it seems like Yoakum played Columbus tough. Hitchcock was 35-14. Man, that top side of the bracket with you could have Westwood, Columbus in the second round, Orangefield, Troy, or Yoakum. That's going to be those will be some juicy matchups. But yeah, I'm going to go with Troy. I like what's the Yo coach? I forgot his name. It's Tommy, the Troy head coach.
What?
Brashear. Tommy Brashear. Yeah, I think Brashear's doing a really good job at Troy. They opened up his tenure at Whitney last year, and totally different offense. And they got a running back this year. The Mercury kid can sling the ball around, and I think they're going to score some points, and I think they'll get this one.
All right, let's go to 3A Division II. City View versus Clifton. City View, I don't want to say they'll name their own score, but they won't struggle. I know that. I was shocked. I wasn't shocked that they got beat by Holiday. I was shocked by how bad they got beat by Holiday, but I think that's more just how Holiday is kind of ramping up and getting really ready to make a run. Of course, you still got to go through Gunner in that in this region. But City View beat a really good Jacksboro team. I think they can name their score in this one.
Yeah, Clifton, they're getting better. They're back in the playoffs. I think they were there last year, but they're going to graduate some kids. They've got some young kids coming up in the middle school ranks. Probably going to be a couple years away, but yeah, I think I'm kind of like you. City, you may name their score in this one.
Millsap versus Toller. Look, I keep telling people, man, I'm so impressed with what the Rattlers have done. Everybody was so quick to write them off with losing their head coach and losing Isaac Blessing and moving up from 2A Division I into 3A Division II. They started the year off getting beat by Peaster 10-0. But since then, they've won 9 in a row, and they've beat some pretty solid programs, including this same Millsap team in week 3 of the season. I think it was 30-20. I don't think it'll be that close this time. I think Toller is rolling right now. Over the last 4 games, they've averaged like 48 points scored and only given up like 14 points in those games. And I think that's kind of about where this score will be, like a 42-14 type game.
Yeah, I agree. And if I'm Millsap, I tell my local newspaper guy to not go over to the Toller side. Did you read that article?
No, what happened?
I think it was Brady. Somebody had shared it on Twitter, but the guy at the Brady newspaper, I don't know if his kid plays or whatever, but he was on the Solar sideline taking pictures, and apparently their superintendent said, "Nope, you need to leave. You need to get out of here. You can't be on our side of the field." So
that's weird.
You wrote a big article about it in the newspaper. I thought it was kind of funny.
All right,
the title, "Don't Be Like Brady."
Rice Consolidated versus Lexington. This is another one. I'm telling you, I think Lexington will win, but don't be shocked if this is closer than what people think. Rice Consolidated went like a month into the season before they gave up points. Now they started giving up points, but it was who they lost to: East Bernard and Tidehaven, 2 teams that are still playing playoffs. Of course, Tidehaven last year played in the state championship game. Lexington, of course, they were rocking and rolling, and then they got upset 2 weeks ago by Blanco. I think Lexington wins, but I would not be shocked if Rice Consolidated keeps this one possession.
Yeah, I remember seeing something about that. They didn't give us 1, 2, 3. Yeah, they went 3. Gave up 6 points in their first 4 games. Pretty impressive. Whatever level you're on, playing that. But yeah, I like Lexington. I think Case Evans, he'll have them ready to go.
East Bernard versus Rogers. Give me East Bernard.
Yeah, I mean, I like Coach. Rogers. They got a really good program. Kind of down this year. They were scoring 50 points a game, but giving up 55 early on. So they're at 3-7, playing in Giddings against East Bernard. Yeah, give me East Bernard.
All right, where do you want to go next?
Let's go. This is a game I watched. Against number 10, I believe, Hamilton. Hamilton's 10-0. They beat DeLeon last week in a really good football game. I watched it on TV on the NFHS. It wouldn't surprise me if Hamilton and DeLeon end up in the regional finals. That's I'm not saying Region 2 is down, but there's just nobody that really kind of makes your ears perk up. So that was a good one. I got Hamilton in this one.
No, I mean, and we have talked about that before on this show about that region, and there's just who's gonna take that step. I think Hamilton wins this game, but again, I will point out. I think White Rock can hang around with them. I think 6-2A this year has been very underrated good. I think Wolf City, if you want to talk about a team people need to watch out for, Wolf City, of course, they beat Timpson a couple weeks ago, and that got, they got big news, but then they got beat by Tioga 2 weeks ago. That was kind of a shocking, but also Wolf City's star running back was out for a lot of that game. They turned around and bounced back last week and beat Alvord. So Tioga, Wolf City, I like 6-2A in a lot of these matchups, but this is the one, what we talked about, the 1v4. This is the one I think that 5-2A has the advantage. I think Hamilton wins. I don't want to say they're going to name their own score, but I think they'll win comfortably.
Man, this next one, I don't know if I'm going to put it on upset alert or not, but, Rio Vista is getting better as the year went on. They've lost a couple in that district. That district's not real tough. Italy's quarterback went down, so they're kind of – I don't know if he's coming back for the play. I've heard different stories that he broke a collarbone or he was suited up and they're just going to hold him out. But I think this Rio-Mildred game is going to be a little bit more competitive than most people think. Mildred's 10-0. They've ran their schedule undefeated. Rio Vista's kind of been up and down, but Coach Woodard's brother's over there. That I think he's doing a good job. And I think this is going to be closer than most people have it, but give me Mildred.
See, I will respectfully disagree. I think Mildred will win this game, and I'm not going to say they can name their own score, but I don't think it'll be that close. When I'm looking at teams and who they've played, and you can be 5-5. So okay, then let me see who you've lost to. Okay, you've lost to some good schools. Now let me see the scores of those. And the thing that does impress me about Rio Vista is in their losses, they've been to some pretty solid teams, and they've been at least kind of competitive. But for Mildred, man, this is a team that last year was 6-4. They thought they were going to be better last year. They struggled in district. They weren't able to quite make it. They have a really solid quarterback in Ashton Moore and a really good running back in Ashton Fry. Maybe their parents need to work on being different with the names, though. I don't understand. Anyways, point is, I like the Eagles in this one. I think the Eagles could be a team with the right break, could end up playing a few rounds.
Yeah, and I agree with that 100%. I just think, of course, Rio Vista did get beat by Valley Mills that last game of the year, but I think they're going to surprise a little, and just keeping it competitive. It may not be a blowout that most people think. You got Cayuga going against 901 Axtell in Athens. I hear Levi Leathers is coming back for the playoffs. They've had trouble with the quarterback position. The last couple have been coming in and playing quarterback. Fetch just really couldn't get that offensive going, so they kind of switched it up a little bit. I don't think Axtell will have trouble with Cayuga.
Again, this is the funny thing is their quarterback has been out, and in those two games, they've scored 87 points. Look, I think for Axtell, this is the situation. Will last year play into their mind? Because last year that was going to be the year they finally going to go 3 and 4 rounds, and of course they get upset by Valley Mills. I don't think that happens this year with Cayuga. Cayuga is not great, but don't be surprised if in that first quarter Axtell fumbles the ball, or they have a couple 3 and outs, or maybe they have a blown defensive coverage or something, because you can't tell me last year's not sitting in their mind.
Yeah, and maybe it'll help out. That loss is out of the way. They got that one loss to Italy this year, and that one's done with, and now they can go play ball. Kearns, that quarterback's tough. I don't know that I'd want them in the first round. They got Dawson, and I believe they've already played once this year. Let me pull it up.
I think so. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, they beat Dawson 35-9 this year, and that's not saying they will again. Dawson's probably a different team they were when they played them in week 3. I think I got Kearns in this one. I mean, that quarterback, his name is Music Runnels, but he is an athlete. He can really get it done, and I like Kearns.
No, I think Kearns wins as well. What happened? Of course, I haven't been on the show the last couple weeks. I got sick last week and stuff. But what happened with Italy? They beat Axtell. We talk about it. Looks like they're firmly in the driver's seat for the district championship, and then they lose back-to-back games to finish out the season. Does that carry over? How many times have we seen that where the team that's probably the better team gets beat in the first round because they ended the season on a down note, and it kind of feels like Italy's done that, while Frankston, and by the way, those are 2 teams that we're talking about. They're playing each other. Mm-hmm. They've been the exact opposite. They haven't lost since October. They're on a 5-game winning streak. I think this game is going to be way closer than what people think. I'm going to go Frankston in a little bit of an upset.
Yeah, and I don't blame you, and especially if Jared Wood, the Italy quarterback's not going to play, because that he makes them go. They don't throw the ball a whole lot, but he'll run the ball 20, 25 times a game, and he'll break one for 80 yards. He's got a lot of speed. He's a tough kid to tackle. Very rare combination of a big kid that can run. So if Jared Wood, and I don't know if he's playing or not, I've heard different stories, but yeah, if he's not playing, I got Frankston.
All right, what do you got in Mason versus Rosebud Lott? Give me Mason by a good amount.
Yeah, I agree. Rosebud kind of snuck in there. Crawford, same thing. Well, Crawford had to win to get in, but yeah, give me Mason. And then Crawford, they have San Saba. I don't know. This may be more competitive than what a 2-8 team versus a normal 6-4 team. What do you think?
Yeah, exactly that. I'm trying to think. What was it? San Saba had that few year stretch, like 2016 to 2019 or 2018, but since then they've been kind of a struggle. None of their wins are extremely inspiring. 14-2A outside of Mason, and I guess Holland's solid this year, but not really, nothing oh my god. But are we also leaning a little bit too much on Crawford? Hey, it's Crawford. Eventually Crawford will be Crawford. Well, they're not. Obviously, they're not. But I'm going to go San Saba in it. But that's a flip 'em coin game right there.
Yeah, and then you didn't, the aforementioned Holland, Marlin. They're playing at Waco ISD. Marlin. They had that 21-7 loss to West, and then district started, and they pretty much rolled. I don't see any games, nothing close in district. I think they're kind of rounding in the form. I don't know if they're going to be a regional finalist, but they'll probably make a little bit of noise. I got Marlin in this one.
I got Marlin, but it wouldn't shock me if it's close. I don't know what I don't really know what the fans' expectation is of who they think is going to win that one. But I think Marlin can win, but Holland is one of those programs you just never want to play in the playoffs.
How about 3AD2, Sims Bowie against Bremond in Maybank?
Oh, Bremond will do dirty things.
I don't know much about Sims Bowie.
Sims had to win last week. I have a little personal connection with this one. In 9-2A Division II, Sims had to win last week to make the playoffs. They had to beat Detroit. Detroit's head coach is Paul Johnson. This is his first year there. I coached under Paul Johnson, and when I did my little stretch of coaching in the late 2000s, from 2008 to 2010. So I have that connection, and it's an East Texas thing. But Sims Bowie, last year last few years they've been really solid. That you kind of lock them in at 8-3. I think 2 years ago they won a playoff game and was 9-3. This year though they're extremely young. They lost a really, really good quarterback from last year, and they kind of scrambled to make the playoffs. And look, 9-2A Division II was not good this year. Like it's the best team. The team that won district is the Mod Cardinals. Mod started off the year giving up 74 points, 56 points, 56 points, and 40 points. That's your district champ right there, folks. Bremond's miles better than Sims Bowie. That game will get extremely ugly.
Yeah, maybe same could be said about Cumbie and Mart. I believe Mart, they dropped down the rankings after that. I don't know. I heard, who knows what happened at Mart against Goldthwaite. That was kind of, what do you think about that game?
I think Mart's.
I don't know what to say. I don't know what I can say about that.
I think Mart's going through the issue that all powers go through when they have a bump in the road and they are not as strong as they have been, where people start questioning the wrong reasons and coaches start getting kind of thrown under the bus and coaches get defensive about being thrown over. This is just what happens in programs when when you've been humming along like Mart has for the last 10 years. And then all of a sudden you don't have that year that people are expecting. And saying that, hey, great year for Cumbie. This is a program that just struggles year in and year out. They can't ever really keep a coach. They're basically 5-5 every year, or 7-4 and all that. And Tom Draco's the head guy that's coaching there. If he stays there, I think he can kind of turn Cumbie around. But Cumbie's just in an area where there's just not a lot of athletes. There's just not a lot of football players. I think Mark can get right with ball this week.
Yeah, and if you're going to call it a down year, they're at worst probably a regional final. I mean, I don't.
We think
yeah.
we got to see.
Yeah,
we've got to see the headspace. If Mart comes out and just destroys Cumbie 62-0 and it's efficient, then I'm not worried. But if Mart comes out and even if they win 42-0, but they've had 4 fumbles and they've got 12 penalties and they're doing all the same thing that they've been doing all year, then I don't know if Mart is going to be a regional. At the end of the game, in the region final, I'm trying to spit out there.
Yeah, that's
now.
true.
In saying that, we'll finish it off with Wortham and Clarksville. Same thing. Look, 10-2A will just do really ugly and mean things to the 9-2A, like Maud. Okay, so Maud's your district champ. All right, like as we talked about, I would say Goldthwaite is probably a 4-touchdown favorite, if not more. Over them. That's the difference right there. That's why we talked all year long. You and I talked about it on here. Grant and I, when we did the toughest district show, we said 10-2A Division II was the toughest. And at times it felt like it underperformed, but then you realized, well, no, this is why we said it was the toughest district. They all beat up on each other, and that's exactly what happened. But yeah, Wortham will destroy Clarksville. Goldthwaite will destroy Maud.
I think that wraps it up, man. I don't have any games. You got anything?
No, that's going to be it for me. Of course, we're going to be recording Sideline to Sideline. Actually, here in about 45 minutes, you and I were wrapping this one up, and then I'll reset the cameras for Grant. We pick every playoff game in 2A, 3A, and 4A. Are you going anywhere this week?
I'll be in Waxahachie Thursday night. Then I got work the weekend, so I'll go watch Whitney Palmer, and I'll be tuned in to some other games Friday night. Where are y'all headed?
Grant, I think, is going to go see Chapel Hill versus Huffman Hargrave. I always spend the first 2 weeks of the playoffs kind of in Studio Central. I'll have my TV with one game on. I've got the studio laptop, which I use for research. It'll have a game on. Then I have the production computer, which is where I record. When people see me turned right, that's actually what I'm looking at. This other, I'll have 5 or 6 games just kind of bouncing through. I kind of like to do that the first 2 rounds and just kind of check in like that because, we're talking so much. And then normally on Thanksgiving, we make our big we do a big 2-day trip and we'll go at like 4 or 5 games and we'll get up that Saturday morning and watch Michigan and Ohio State. And this year we got Texas and A&M on that Friday morning as well. So that'll be the next time I'm on the road. I'm actually kind of red zoning it for the next 2 weeks.
Nothing wrong with that. I like doing that, having the iPad, the phone, the TV, and the computer all up, watching different games if they're on. Yeah. Last week I was really wanting to watch Winsboro Malakoff, and it just said delayed the whole time. I think I texted you about that. So ended up watching
everything.
Go ahead.
I'll just say everything got messed up because games got pushed up because of the weather and everything. And people don't understand that, like I do this full time. I don't call games anymore, but I do this full time, but people like you don't. And so if you're broadcasting of the game and then there's an hour change, that can completely change whether you can show, you can be there to do the broadcast because it's job. And so the weather just kind of messed all that up. But anyway, that's week 1 of the playoffs in the books. We'll be back again next week to do it all again. Not as quite as many teams. Hey, where can people find this show on Facebook and Twitter?
Go to Facebook and Central Texas Football Podcast, or CTFP on Facebook, and same thing on Twitter, or X. I'm sorry, Central Texas Football Podcast or at CTFP.
Also,
like it, share it, whatever you want to do.
And you can find it on YouTube at L4 Media Company. And again, thanks to our sponsor, Ranch and Home Masters. Visit them online at ranchmasters.com. And until week 2, be safe if you're going to see some football. He's Kenny. I'm Terry. This is the Central Texas